The mahogany door clicked shut behind Vanessa Corleone, and she smiled. Wide, victorious, venomous. "Let's make this quick, Mr. Harrison," she said, her manicured nails tapping against the leather armrest. "I have a spa appointment at 3. Attorney Gerald Harrison adjusted his reading glasses, his weathered face unreadable as stone. The afternoon sun sliced through Venetian blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the oak desk between them. Across the room, pressed into the corner like a ghost no one wanted to acknowledge, sat Zoe Lerner, 22 years old. Dark skin that glowed despite the grief hollowing her cheeks. She wore a simple black dress, the same one she'd worn to her father's funeral 3 days ago. Her hands rested in her lap, perfectly still, but her eyes tracked every movement Vanessa made. "Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Quick question before we dive deeper into Naomi's story. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. These stories take time to craft, and your support means everything. Now let's see just how far this family is willing to go." "Mrs. Corleone," Harrison began, his voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone who'd spent 40 years navigating family warfare. "Before we proceed, I should mention that your late husband's estate planning was complex." Vanessa waved a dismissive hand, her diamond bracelet catching the light like a weapon. "Save the legal jargon, Gerald. We both know why we're here." She turned to face Zoe directly, her smile sharpening into something cruel. "Your father was a wonderful man, sweetie. Truly. But let's be realistic, you were from his first life. Ancient history." She pronounced the words with surgical precision, each syllable designed to cut. "Thomas and I built something real in our 5 years together. Real estate. Investments. A future. You were just, well, a reminder of what he left behind." Zoe's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "She said nothing. Nothing to say?" Vanessa's voice dripped with mock concern. "No." "Well, that's probably for the best. You always were so quiet. So forgettable." She turned back to Harrison. "Now, let's discuss the will." Harrison opened a leather portfolio, spreading documents across his desk with deliberate slowness. "Your husband's original will, drafted 7 years ago, named Zoe as the primary beneficiary of his estate, valued at approximately $1.2 million, including the family home, his business holdings, and—" "The original will, yes," Vanessa interrupted, leaning forward like a predator closing in on wounded prey. "But Thomas changed his mind. We discussed it extensively. He wanted me to have everything. It only makes sense. I was his wife. I took care of him when he was sick. I was there at the end." "She wasn't there at the end." Zoe had held her father's hand as he took his last breath in that sterile hospital room, his final words a whispered apology she still didn't fully understand. Vanessa had been at a charity gala, posting Instagram stories about champagne and canapes. But Zoe said nothing. Harrison's pen hovered over the papers. "Mrs. Corleone, do you have documentation of this change of heart?" Vanessa's smile never wavered. She reached into her Hermes bag and produced a folded document with a flourish. "Right here. Signed and dated 2 months before his death. Thomas wanted to make sure I was taken care of. That we were taken care of." She shot Zoe a pointed look. "After all, she's a grown woman. She can work. I sacrificed my career to be there for him." The career Vanessa referenced was a brief stint as a lifestyle influencer that had generated exactly $47 in revenue before she'd set her sights on Thomas Lerner, a widower with money and a daughter who still mourned her mother. Harrison examined the document, his expression unchanging. Behind him, on a credenza, sat a sealed manila envelope, slightly thicker than the others. Zoe's eyes drifted to it, then away. "This appears to be in order," Harrison said slowly, though something in his tone suggested he was choosing his words very carefully. "However, I'll need to verify the signature and have this reviewed by—" "It's his signature," Vanessa snapped. "I watched him sign it." "Are you calling me a liar, Gerald?" "I'm calling you cautious," Harrison replied evenly. "Estate law requires due diligence." Vanessa's face flushed red beneath her foundation.
Fine.
Review it. Verify it. Do whatever you need to do. But understand this. She stood, towering over the desk in her 6-inch heels. That house, that money, those accounts? They're mine. Thomas wanted me to have them. And if there's any problem with that, if anyone tries to stand in my way, her gaze cut to Zoe like a blade. I have very expensive lawyers who will make your life absolute hell. Do we understand each other? The silence that followed was suffocating. Drop a comment below if you've ever witnessed someone show their true colors after a loss. Hit subscribe if you want to see how this plays out. Zoe finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. When can I collect my father's personal items from the house? Vanessa laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that echoed off the wood-paneled walls. Your father's items? Sweetheart, everything in that house belongs to me now. The paintings he collected, the watch his father gave him, those ridiculous vintage records he loved, mine. All of it. If you want something to remember him by, try a photograph. Oh wait. She snapped her fingers with theatrical cruelty. I had the photo albums boxed up for donation last week. Silly me. Zoe's hands trembled once, a barely visible shudder, before she pressed them flat against her thighs. Harrison cleared his throat. Mrs. Corleone, until the estate is formally settled, nothing should be removed or… I'm not removing anything, Gerald. I'm living there. It's my home. My things. If little Zoe has a problem with that, she can take it up with my attorneys. Vanessa gathered her bag and stood. I expect the paperwork finalized by Friday. I have buyers interested in the house, and I don't intend to wait. Buyers? Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. Mrs. Corleone, the estate hasn't even gone through probate yet. Selling property at this stage would be… I'll do whatever I damn well please with my property, Vanessa said coldly. Thomas left it to me. The house, the accounts, everything. You have the documentation right there. She moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to Zoe with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You know, your father used to talk about you sometimes. Usually after his third scotch. She tilted her head, fake sympathy oozing from every pore. He felt guilty, I think. Guilty that he'd moved on. Guilty that he'd found happiness with me. Guilty that you reminded him of your mother, the sad, broken woman who could never make him truly happy. He told me once that loving you felt like loving a ghost. Isn't that poetic? The words landed like physical blows. Zoe's mother had died of cancer when Zoe was 16. She'd been brilliant, kind, fierce, everything Vanessa could never be. Zoe stood slowly, her movements controlled despite the rage and grief warring beneath her skin. When she spoke, her voice was ice. My father loved me. Whatever he said after 3 scotches, she met Vanessa's gaze directly. He said because you poured them. For just a moment, something flickered in Vanessa's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. But it vanished quickly, replaced by that same vicious smile. Believe what you want, sweetie. Won't change the will. She yanked open the door. Friday, Gerald. I want this finished. The door slammed. The reverberations hung in the air. Harrison watched Zoe carefully. Miss Lerner, are you?
Fine.
Zoe's voice was steady, but her eyes burned. What happens next? Harrison leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. His gaze drifted to that sealed envelope on the credenza, then back to Zoe. Next, I verify the authenticity of the document Mrs. Corleone provided. I review your father's assets. And I make absolutely certain that everything is handled according to his true wishes. And if that document is real, then we follow the law. He paused, and something in his expression shifted, a ghost of a smile that appeared and vanished so quickly Zoe wasn't sure she'd seen it at all. But the law, Miss Lerner, is rarely as simple as it appears. 3 days later, Vanessa Corleone sat in the master bedroom of what she now considered her house, surrounded by boxes and bubble wrap. She'd hired professional movers to clear out Thomas's things, clothes, books, the vintage record player he'd restored himself, the model ships he'd built with Zoe when she was a child. All of it, gone. Donated, discarded, destroyed. She wanted a clean slate. A fresh start. Room for her things, her aesthetic, her life. Her phone buzzed. A text from Gerald Harrison. Need to schedule another meeting. Tomorrow, 10 a.m.
Urgent.
Vanessa frowned. She typed back. Can it wait until Friday? I have a showing. The response came immediately. This cannot wait. Please confirm. She sighed, irritation prickling up her spine, but responded with a curt, fine. The showing she'd mentioned was real. She'd already contacted a real estate agent, already had 3 potential buyers lined up for the house. The property was worth $850,000, maybe more in the current market. Combined with Thomas's business investments and bank accounts, she was looking at walking away with over $1 million. Maybe more if she played her cards right. Her sister, Diane, had been texting her constantly since the funeral. Diane, who'd never approved of Thomas, who'd called him old money past his prime, who'd suggested Vanessa could do better. Now Diane wanted to know when she could visit the house, see the spoils of Vanessa's successful marriage. Vanessa smiled at her phone and texted back. Soon. Very soon. Everything's coming together. That evening, Zoe sat in her small studio apartment across town, staring at her laptop screen. Bank statements. Tax records. Her father's emails, which she'd accessed using the password he'd shared with her years ago. She'd been combing through everything, trying to understand, trying to find something, anything that made sense. Her father had been meticulous, organized. He documented everything. And in those documents, in the margins of spreadsheets and the subject lines of emails, a pattern emerged. He'd started separating his assets 6 months ago, moving money, creating new accounts. And in one email, sent to Harrison 3 weeks before his death, a single line. The failsafe is in place. She'll be protected. Zoe read it again and again. She'll be protected. Who else could she be?
Her phone rang.
Harrison. Miss Lerner, I'm calling to ask you to attend tomorrow's meeting. 10 a.m. Vanessa said it was urgent. What's wrong? I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Harrison's voice carried that same careful neutrality, but underneath, was that anticipation? Please trust me when I say your presence is necessary. Zoe agreed. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. The next morning, Vanessa arrived at Harrison's office 15 minutes late, iced coffee in hand, radiating impatience. She froze when she saw Zoe already seated in the corner, same quiet posture, same unreadable expression. Why is she here? Vanessa demanded. Because this concerns both of you, Harrison said. He gestured to the empty chair. Please sit. Vanessa remained standing. I don't have time for games, Gerald. If there's a problem with the will. The will is not the issue, Harrison interrupted, and something in his tone made Vanessa pause.
Please. Seat.
She sat, but her jaw was tight, her eyes hard. Harrison spread documents across his desk, the same documents from 3 days ago, plus new additions. Bank statements, insurance policies, legal memorandums stamped with red ink. Urgent. Confidential. Immediate action required. I've completed my review of Mrs. Corleone's documentation, Harrison began. He held up the paper Vanessa had provided, the one bearing Thomas Lerner's signature. This document is interesting. It's legitimate, Vanessa said quickly. Thomas signed it. I told you. The signature is legitimate, Harrison confirmed. I had it verified by 3 separate handwriting experts. It is, without question, Thomas Lerner's signature. Vanessa relaxed slightly, her smile returning. Then we're done here. Friday. However, Harrison continued, his voice cutting through her victory like a scalpel, the date is problematic. Silence crashed down. I don't understand, Vanessa said, but her voice had lost its edge. Harrison pulled out another document, older, yellowed slightly at the edges. This is your husband's original will, drafted 7 years ago, as I mentioned. It names Zoe as primary beneficiary. But 2 years ago, Thomas made an amendment. He slid the paper toward Vanessa. He added a codicil stipulating that any changes to his will after this date. He tapped the date with one finger. would require the co-signature of both myself and an independent witness. Your document has only Thomas's signature. The color drained from Vanessa's face. That's a technicality. He obviously wanted. It's not a technicality, Harrison said quietly. It's the law. Vanessa's hands clenched into fists. You're saying the will I have isn't valid? I'm saying it doesn't supersede the original will without proper execution. Harrison folded his hands. Which means, as it stands, Zoe remains the primary beneficiary of Thomas Lerner's estate. The room tilted. Vanessa gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white.
No.
No, that's not. Thomas wanted me to have everything.
He told me.
He promised. What Thomas wanted and what Thomas legally documented are two different things. Vanessa stood abruptly, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. This is ridiculous.
I was his wife.
I took care of him. I deserve. She whirled on Zoe. You probably put him up to this, didn't you? Poisoned him against me. Made him keep that old will. I hadn't spoken to my father in 3 months before he died, Zoe said quietly. You made sure of that. It was true. Vanessa had slowly, methodically cut Zoe out of Thomas's life. Screening calls. Forgetting to pass along messages. Scheduling couples trips during holidays. She'd done it so smoothly that Thomas barely noticed the distance growing. Until the end, when he'd called Zoe from the hospital, his voice weak but urgent. Come.
Please.
I need to tell you something. He died before he could. Vanessa's breathing was ragged. I want a second opinion. I want my lawyers to review. Of course, Harrison said. That's your right. However, he paused as his desk phone rang, the sudden sound sharp in the tense air. He glanced at the caller ID, and something changed in his expression. Excuse me. I need to take this. He picked up the phone. Harrison speaking. Vanessa paced near the window, her mind racing. There had to be a way to fix this. The document was real. Thomas had signed it. She'd been careful. So careful. The date was the only problem, and dates could be adjusted. She had connections. Resources. She'd come too far to lose now. I see, Harrison was saying into the phone, his voice measured. When did this flag? A pause.
Yes.
Yes, I have both parties here now. Another pause, longer this time. I understand. Send me the documentation immediately. Encrypted. He hung up. His face was carefully neutral, but his hands, as he set down the phone, trembled slightly. What do you think that phone call was about? Drop your theories below and smash that subscribe button. This is about to get wild. Who was that? Vanessa demanded. Harrison didn't answer immediately. He opened his computer, typed rapidly, then stared at the screen. The silence stretched. 30 seconds. A minute. The only sound was the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Finally, he looked up. His gaze moved between Vanessa and Zoe, settling on Zoe, with something that might have been relief. That was the First National Bank, he said quietly. They've flagged some unusual activity on your late husband's accounts. Vanessa's stomach dropped. What kind of activity? We'll discuss it. Harrison stood, gathering papers. I need to make copies of some documents. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Please wait here. He left, taking the mysterious manila envelope with him. The door clicked shut. Vanessa and Zoe sat in suffocating silence, separated by 15 feet and a gulf of hatred so wide it could swallow cities. Vanessa broke first. You think you've won, don't you? Zoe didn't respond. You think that old will mean something? That you get to walk away with my husband's money? Vanessa's voice was low, venomous. I'll fight this. I'll drag it through court for years. By the time I'm done, there won't be anything left but legal fees and ashes. My father loved me, Zoe said softly. Whatever you think you had with him, whatever lies you've told yourself, he loved me. That's why you hated me so much. Vanessa's face twisted. He pitied you. That's not love. You're wrong. Am I? Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malice. Then why did he sign that paper, Zoe? Why did he agree to cut you out?
Because I asked him to.
Because I told him to. And he did it.
For me.
The words hung between them like poison. Zoe's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely a whisper. What did you do? Vanessa smiled. What I had to. When Harrison returned, he wasn't alone. Behind him walked a woman in a dark blazer, carrying a leather briefcase embossed with the First National Bank logo. Her expression was professional, controlled, but her eyes held the sharp awareness of someone who dealt in numbers, patterns, and fraud. This is Janet Pierce, Senior Fraud Investigator for First National Bank, Harrison said. Mrs. Pierce, this is Vanessa Corleone and Zoe Lerner. Vanessa stood slowly. Fraud investigator? What is this? Janet set her briefcase on the desk and opened it with practiced efficiency. Mrs. Corleone, 3 weeks ago, several large transfers were made from your late husband's accounts. Transfers totaling approximately $400,000. The room went cold. Those transfers were made to an offshore account registered under a shell corporation. The timing, just days before Mr. Lerner's death, triggered our automated fraud detection system. Janet pulled out a tablet, swiping through pages of transactions. Normally, we'd flag this immediately, but the transfers were authorized using Mr. Lerner's credentials, so we initially assumed he'd made them himself. He did, Vanessa said quickly. Thomas handled all of our finances. If he moved money, he had his reasons. That's what we thought, Janet continued, until we compared the IP addresses used for the transfers. They didn't match any of Mr. Lerner's devices. They matched a laptop registered to you, Mrs. Corleone. The oxygen seemed to drain from the room. Vanessa's face went white, then red, then white again. I occasionally used his accounts to pay bills. He gave me permission. This is a misunderstanding. The transfers weren't bill payments, Janet said calmly. They were wire transfers to a foreign account that has no connection to Mr. Lerner's business or personal expenses. And the timing is particularly significant. They occurred while Mr. Lerner was in the ICU, sedated and unable to access his accounts himself. Zoe remembered those days. Her father, barely conscious, tubes and wires covering his body. Vanessa, always on her phone, always stepping out to make calls. Always busy. Furthermore, Janet continued, after Mr. Lerner's death, you attempted to access these same accounts multiple times using his credentials. When those attempts failed, we'd frozen the accounts pending investigation. You contacted our customer service department claiming there was an error. You tried to authorize yourself as a joint account holder using a power of attorney document. Which was legitimate, Vanessa said, her voice rising. Which was backdated, Janet corrected. The notary seal didn't match any registered notary in the state during the dates listed. It was forged. The word hung in the air like an executioner's blade.
Forged.
Harrison picked up the sealed manila envelope, the one he'd been guarding since that first meeting. He broke the seal slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Your husband, Harrison said, looking at Vanessa, was a cautious man, particularly after he married you. Vanessa's hands were shaking. What is that? This, Harrison held up the first page, is a comprehensive life insurance policy taken out by Thomas Lerner 18 months ago. The beneficiary is Zoe Lerner. The payout is $900,000. Zoe's breath caught. $900,000. But here's the interesting part, Harrison continued, his voice steady as a drumbeat. This policy has a special clause. A fraud trigger clause. If anyone, he looked directly at Vanessa, attempts to defraud, forge documents related to, or illegally access Thomas Lerner's estate within 6 months of his death, the policy pays out immediately to Zoe, and the perpetrator forfeits any and all claims to the estate. The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Her face had gone the color of ash. No, she whispered. No, that's not, he wouldn't. He did, Harrison said. Because he knew, Mrs. Corleone. He knew who you were, what you were. He hired a private investigator 6 months before his death. Did you know that? Vanessa stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the desk. The investigator documented everything. The affair you were having with your personal trainer. The credit cards you'd opened in Thomas's name, without his knowledge. The calls to lawyers about divorce settlements before Thomas was even diagnosed. Harrison's voice was clinical, merciless. Thomas knew, and he prepared. Janet stepped forward, her expression hard. Mrs. Corleone, the forged power of attorney, the unauthorized wire transfers, and the attempted fraud on Mr. Lerner's accounts constitute multiple felonies. I'm required by law to report these findings to the district attorney's office. Wait. Vanessa's voice cracked. Wait, please. I can explain. The money, I needed it for medical bills. For Thomas's care. I was going to pay it back. Medical bills, Harrison interrupted, that were fully covered by Thomas's health insurance. We have the records. Vanessa's face crumpled. She sank into the chair, her body folding in on itself. All the arrogance, all the vicious confidence gone. In its place sat a terrified woman watching her carefully constructed lies collapse. You can't do this, she whispered. He was my husband. I loved him. You forged documents, Janet said flatly. You stole money from a dying man. And you attempted to defraud his daughter of her inheritance. The evidence is incontrovertible. Harrison turned to Zoe. Throughout the entire revelation, she hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. Her face was unreadable, but tears streamed silently down her cheeks. Miss Lerner, Harrison said gently, the insurance policy pays out immediately. Additionally, as per your father's original will, the only valid will, you inherit the entirety of his estate. The house. The business holdings. All of it. Zoe finally found her voice. It was hoarse, raw. He knew. He knew, Harrison confirmed. And he made sure you'd be protected. The next week moved with the inexorable momentum of a landslide. Vanessa hired lawyers, expensive ones, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents. The wire transfers made from her laptop. The backdated power of attorney with the fraudulent notary seal. Every lie she told had left a paper trail, and that trail led straight back to her. The district attorney filed charges. Wire fraud, forgery, theft, attempted fraud on an estate. Each charge carried years of potential prison time. The house, Thomas's house, the one Vanessa had already been planning to sell, was returned to Zoe. When Vanessa was forced to collect her belongings, she arrived with a single suitcase and her sister, Diane, who no longer answered Vanessa's excited texts about her windfall. Zoe was there that day. She stood in the doorway, watching as Vanessa packed, as movers carried out the expensive furniture Vanessa had bought with Thomas's credit cards, as reality settled over the woman who'd been so sure she'd won. I want you to know something, Zoe said as Vanessa prepared to leave. Vanessa paused, her hand on the doorframe. She looked smaller now, defeated. The designer clothes seemed to hang wrong on her diminished frame. My father did love you, Zoe continued. At first, before he realized what you were. He told me, in the hospital, right before he died. He said, I'm sorry I brought her into your life. I'm sorry I was so lonely that I mistook cruelty for strength. Vanessa's shoulders shook. He said he'd made mistakes. But he also said he'd fix them. He asked me to forgive him. Zoe's voice broke. And I did. Because he was my father, and he loved me enough to protect me from you. Vanessa turned, and for the first time, Zoe saw genuine emotion in her eyes. Not anger, not hate, just emptiness. I could have loved him, Vanessa whispered. If he'd been different, weaker, more willing to let you destroy him? Zoe finished. He was weak once. When my mother died, that's when you found him. You saw a man drowning and you pushed his head underwater. Vanessa flinched. But my father was stronger than you thought. Stronger than he thought. Zoe stepped aside, clearing the doorway. Goodbye, Vanessa. I hope whatever comes next teaches you something. But I doubt it will. Vanessa left. The door closed behind her, and Zoe stood in her childhood home, surrounded by the echoes of her father's love and the weight of his final gift. 3 months later, Zoe sat in Harrison's office again. The same wood-paneled room. the same afternoon light. But everything felt different. Harrison slid a letter across the desk. Your father asked me to give you this after everything was settled. I think now qualifies. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy. Her name written in her father's handwriting. Zoe opened it with trembling hands. My dearest Zoe, if you're reading this, then you know. You know what Vanessa was. What she tried to do. And you know that I protected you. I need you to understand, I didn't see it at first. After your mother died, I was lost. Broken. And Vanessa seemed like life, when all I felt was death. She was vibrant, exciting, alive. I mistook her energy for love. By the time I understood my mistake, we were married. And she had her hooks so deep in our lives that I knew she'd try something when I was gone. The private investigator. The insurance policy. The fraud trigger clause. I designed it all 6 months ago, after I was diagnosed. Not to trap her, but to protect you. Because you, my brilliant, strong, beautiful daughter, are the only thing I ever did right. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I'm sorry I let her into our lives. I'm sorry for the years she stole from us. But I'm not sorry for this. For making sure that when I'm gone, you have everything you need. Everything you deserve. The house is yours. Make it a home again. Fill it with laughter and music and love. All the things your mother would have wanted. The money is yours. Use it wisely. Build something. Create something.
Live.
And know that I loved you every single day of your life. Even when I was too weak to show it. Even when she was there, poisoning everything. Even then, especially then. You were never a ghost, Zoe. You were never ancient history. You were my daughter. You are my daughter. And you're the best part of me. Live well. Live freely. Live without her shadow. And forgive me if you can. All my love.
Dad.
Zoe read the letter 3 times. By the 3rd reading, the tears blurred the words, but she didn't need to see them anymore. They were carved into her heart. If this story moved you, honor it by leaving a comment about someone who protected you when you couldn't protect yourself. And subscribe, because stories about love defeating greed, we need more of those. Harrison handed her a tissue. He was a good man, your father. He made mistakes, but he fixed them. He did, Zoe agreed. He really did. Zoe stood in the backyard of her father's house, her house now, watching contractors install the final touches on the recording studio. She'd used part of the inheritance to renovate the space, converting the old garage into a professional music production facility. Her mother had been a singer. Her father had loved jazz. And Zoe, who'd abandoned her music dreams years ago when money got tight, was finally building something that honored them both. The insurance policy payout, $900,000, had changed her life. She'd paid off her student loans, invested in the house, donated a portion to cancer research in her mother's name, and set up a scholarship fund for children who'd lost parents so they could pursue their dreams without the weight of financial fear. The estate, the business holdings, the investments provided steady income. Enough that she could create. Enough that she could breathe. Enough that she could finally, truly live. Her phone buzzed. A notification from the district attorney's office. Vanessa Corleone has accepted a plea deal. 3 years in federal prison. Restitution payments to begin immediately. 3 years. It seemed both too long and not long enough. Zoe deleted the notification. Vanessa was the past. A closed chapter.
A conscionaritare.
This, the studio, the music, the home filled with light and possibility. This was the future. She walked inside, past the photographs she'd rescued from donation bins and reframed. Her mother, laughing at a beach. Her father, holding a tiny Zoe on his shoulders. The 3 of them together, before cancer and grief and predators disguised as second chances. On her father's old record player, the one Vanessa had tried to throw away, a Miles Davis album spun, filling the house with the sound of trumpet and memory. Zoe sat at her keyboard, fingers poised over the keys. She'd been writing a song, a complicated piece about loss and love, and the ways people protect us even after they're gone. She called it the failsafe. As her fingers found the melody, as the music swelled and filled the space, Zoe smiled. Her father would have loved this. Her mother would have been proud. And Vanessa? Vanessa would never hear it. Would never know that in trying to destroy Zoe, she'd given her everything. The music played. The afternoon sun warmed the room. And Zoe Lerner, daughter, survivor, inheritor of a love so powerful it reached beyond death, began again. The end. If this story reminded you that good people can still win, that love outlasts greed, and that justice sometimes comes wrapped in insurance policies, leave a comment sharing your biggest takeaway. Subscribe for more stories where the right people get their revenge and their redemption. Because these stories, they matter. And so do you.